Firstly, thank you for doing this and thank you for joining and taking out the time. I just wanted to let you know why I'm doing this. So it's essentially
Mhm.
trying to bring different creative professionals from across the world to kind of be part of this
Mm.
where we talk about culture, we talk about how creativity spans across different work environments, different global structures, different organizations, see how that hierarchy between different organizations are and how
Mm.
creative professionals kind of navigate through that. So that's essentially it. I wanted to ease into it with the people from Dubai and then move into the different people I have within my network who are placed in the US and then different parts of the world. So
Mm.
thanks for doing this and thanks for extending your support. So yeah, I just wanted to understand. Let's just keep this very organic and make it more in on the lines of conversation. So I just wanted to understand about a little bit about your role at Firework for those who don't know, since we work closely. It was a great time, but for people who would be watching this for the first time, how do you usually explain your role at Firework?
My role at Firework is I'm the head of operation at Firework and I oversee a few departments. So usually for someone don't know, what I explain is think about if you're using Netflix or YouTube or any other video services. We can say Netflix is a streaming platform, right?
Yeah,
But when you hop onto it, it's because of you wanted to watch different kind of content. You want to watch movies and shows. So this is where the fundamental understanding about the technology piece and the services piece. The
yeah,
technology piece is the fundamental work, but the services piece usually is what's the solution, what's the deliver focus, and then that's where draw you to working with us. So that's
mm,
how I usually describe how help other people to understand the offering and then the services, the solution piece that I'm focusing on to help everyone achieve all the success together.
okay. And that's quite interesting because I was going through your profile initially when we had connected for Firework. And I saw that you have like a diverse set of experiences before you got into the tech world. You're working for a bank in Bank of China in Hong Kong, right? And you're mainly leading data strategy and digital transformation. So what initially drew you to building systems or entering the tech world, which is very different from a traditional corporate path?
Funny thing is the fintech department in Bank of
Mhm.
China, and it sounds like traditional, but all of my previous experience been working in almost like a startup experience. So
Yeah.
my first job is when I joined is the third year of their startup. And then
Okay.
they continue to develop into a very good digital transformation agency. My second job is also working, I think, around the second or third year for a retail company. And when they established their Greater China division, and so I'm one of the first people on their brand and communication team. So the same for this fintech division department, it is on their first year, and then when they joined it, it's part of the business and strategy team. And so I think for me, what I recognize, I'm really enjoying learning and
Yeah.
really enjoying exploring different new opportunities and
Yeah.
exploring what are some different possibilities happen within the business. So for me, I treated this more like a fintech startup instead of a traditional corporate job.
And are there any sort of commonalities between the two industries? Any, or probably I would say in terms of the workflows and the processes that you set, were you trying to achieve anything in terms of setting the common processes that you had when you were working for Bank of China to when you transitioned to Firework?
I think the commonality part is it's just a lot of things you have to figure out, or a
Yeah.
lot of things you're gonna be the first one to do. And it's risky, and then at times it could be scary.
Hmm.
And also, the most funny thing is that I know there's a certain part around the data strategy that I
Yeah.
do, but you have to be the one think about your measurement. It's not gonna be there's already certain measurement that you can follow. There's already easy ways to prove the success and measure the impact, but you have to be the one coming up with that. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it could be never heard of, or it could be something you have to be building that ground up.
Right. And you also mentioned that there is some sort of fear when it comes to the amount of ambiguity that is there when you're transitioning between two industries or between two roles, right? What did you experience when you were working for, say, your previous companies? What did that teach you about navigating change early in your in your career path?
I think in the previous company, first of all, I'm still a little bit junior based on my personal experience and then just my knowledge around everything. There's still quite some of the guidelines for you to look into. And
Hmm.
then ideas are definitely welcoming, but I think there are still the leader of the company, there is a specific structure or within a boundary of risk and challenges we could solve. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to working at Firework and a startup, I think I'm coming in more see myself as taking the ownership for specific areas and a department. So in that perspective, I have to take the full ownership and then think about what would be possible, what would it look like. And so I think that that's where the significant difference I see by this part. And the second thing, of course, because of the industry perspective, for finance, the risk management is really, really critical, right?
Yeah.
Though you have ideas, there still takes a very long time to launch, to figure out the compliance, security, all
Yeah.
of those. But as in the tech world, the things could happen very, very fast,
Yeah.
right? And then there are a lot of things, law and regulation follows behind. And then so you just have to do it first, then follow up with, oh, what could be certain things causing different situation you have to solve.
Okay. And does that shift come to you naturally, or when you talk about stepping into leadership, right? And you said that you're still very early in your career and you have so much to learn, so much to grow. Does that shift into leadership at this point in your career come to you naturally, or does it feel like there are a lot of challenges on a day-to-day basis that you need to overcome? And if so, then what are these challenges and how do you kind of face that?
I think it didn't come naturally as I'm, stepping into the jobs. Like, do I expect this? No, right? But then when things started to happen, you're launching your first, second project and then third project, then you started to realize, oh, this is how does it feel? That this is what it means when it comes to the ownership and responsibility. And
Hmm.
then and then I think the interesting thing is we all recognize, if there are other leaders or someone that you can look up to, you don't have to make the decision.
Yeah.
You gave your recommendation, but in some way you are more relaxed and saying this is not my decision, this is company's decision, leader's decision. But when it comes to startup is you own your decision and you
Hmm.
know this, you have the power to say yes or no to launch on this. It could cause different results. It could be significant success. It could be a failure, and you
Yeah.
just have to make the call for that. So that kind of feeling is really interesting, but also it's help you to grow really, really fast.
Yeah. And what part of operation has like the biggest impact on whether ideas actually succeed? Because as you said, like it takes, when it comes to the fintech world, it takes a lot of time for decisions to be made, for ideas to be executed. When it comes to tech, not so much, because things are much more proactive, much more aggressive, much more agile, and things get done faster. So in your role as head of operations, what is the biggest impact on that your team has on ideas being executed or ideas succeeding?
I think what my team is acting as the secret sauce
Hmm.
to test and launch things to let it go to the market much faster and then proven some of the results much easier. So we are the one working with the client to make sure the adoption and expansion working very easily, right? In a layman's term, basically the team is trying to solve a last mile challenge.
Hmm.
And because we know when using a product versus and really finish the task is, could be different result. So
Yeah.
this is what we're coming to aiming for the end result. And
Yeah.
that has been seeing, oh, if we try to prove concept for certain products, and this is the very easy way to make that happen. Or when we try to grow that product, and we can solve some of the challenges of bottleneck very easily. And we all know a lot of the time, the challenges of a bottleneck is not about tool, it's not
Yeah.
just about using certain feature. It could be a resources constraint, could be alignments issue, and
Yeah.
could be some of the other challenges, even budget as well. So this is where we jump into really soften moving that piece out and able to reach to the destination together with the clients very, very fast.
And is there any sort of time that you can recollect when things, as you said, like the team is placed as a last mile solution, right? Where you get things from one end to the other, and mainly think of it like a transitional team where you're getting things done. So, how do you recollect time where things didn't go as per plan, and what was the kind of challenges that came with it, and how did you solve for that?
Yeah, so there are actually many, many failures or many, many times we have to pause and sunset, right?
Yeah.
There are different kind of reflection around that. So I think it will come into basically three decisions. Number one on the reflection is there anything on the tech or the product side that we can improve? This is more of overall solution or service perspective because we have to see things from end to end. That's
Yeah.
number one path. Number two path is this the right strategy?
Mhm.
Maybe is the strategy shift, right? Is this because the strategy is including, is this the right market? Is the right
Yeah.
target? Maybe something we did in US didn't work, but then could it work in Japan? Or this is something, enterprise really works well, but mid-market didn't hit very well. It could be another, strategy level discussion. So we had to make certain shift around the strategy. And then the last one is, then when it comes to, okay, it's not a problem, it's not about the product, it's not about the strategy, then it could be maybe is the discuss around the product cycle, is that where is it in the life cycle, maybe it's not the right timing, maybe is a little bit behind the time, right? There are many, many times we have to announce sunset for certain either features, certain services, certain offering, and
Yeah.
then that will come to the number three path. So I
Yeah.
would say yes, definitely a lot of reflection based on what we collected, and then those will lead to these three paths in the end.
Okay. And you mentioned that you many times reflect on the strategy and see if it's working for one market versus the other. When it comes to the overall business strategy, is that a top-down approach from the CEO, or is it more of a collaborative process between the entire organization? Since I've personally been a part of it, I know the answer to that, but I would want you to go back to that and talk about how that collaborative structure came to be. Was it decided when Firework initially came into place, or was it more of an intentional decision going through the
Sorry.
different years? No worries. Through the different years of being into existence, was that more of an intentional process or more of an intentional strategy that, okay, we are going to make it a very collaborative process between different cultures or different sort of countries?
I would say the ideas can come in from everybody.
Yeah.
And then the decision will come into a collaborative discussion, right? The ideas could be coming from the CEO, some of the other leaders. It can coming from me. Even certain ideas can coming from intern.
Yeah.
And then the very important part is making the decision, because when coming to a very strategic decision, it's not just about, oh, let's do A. A sounds good. There's also tons of follow up. How do you achieve this? What are some
Yeah.
resources? How do you measure this? Which are some of the strategy we're going to apply to that? And then so that will come into a discussion. It could coming from a certain planning meeting. It could come in regularly in just like a random discussion. Is, oh, this is a good idea. Let's do this. Who is the owner of this? Who can continue support and sponsor this?
Mhm.
I think this is a very important part that one experience that I truly enjoy this part of the, ideation and strategy and then planning around that. And that's
Yeah.
also, seeing this happening also gave me more joy and more achievement when continue working with Firework, right? So that's one of the reasons I'm staying here for longer time is I seeing this is one of the ways of collaborating that I really enjoy. Where at certain other company or certain approach, I know it could be really top down, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have questions, you don't share your concerns, then that would be, very devastating because
Yeah.
certain time you don't have the full context, you don't understand. I do see Firework, there has been a lot of debate, it's a lot of discussion, all very, very healthy to think about things from beginning to the end. And then intentionally, let's say we know there are certain concerns and then or certain risk could be a little bit higher. We will just put as, okay, this is experiment, knowing there is maybe certain chance they're gonna fail or certain time it's not gonna take off. But you basically started to doing that with knowing all of the potentials happening behind.
Yeah, and it just let's off-road a bit because I have a question regarding the kind of environment that Firework had in place, which was very collaborative. Where, as you said, the ideas came from everywhere. When I look back to some sort of cultures, when I talk about mainly the Indian culture, or mainly when it comes to South Asian, they are a bit more reserved when they want to present ideas, or reserved in a room where there are multiple people throwing ideas at each other. You can always probably see an Indian not taking that sort of involvement, right? Maybe it's because how they are in terms of culture. What changed at Firework? Because I saw like people taking initiative, being proactive about their work. It sort of had this independent culture where you really didn't have to tell anyone what to do. It just came naturally to them. While processes were in place and workflows were in place, many traditional organizations also have those processes and workflows. But what did Firework do differently? How did you guys manage to kind of achieve that sort of self-independent or sort of independent culture that you can call it?
Um, that's a very great question and very important observation. And what I think a lot of time it just first of all is having the sensitivity, knowing what certain culture might have specific tendency, and
Mm-hmm.
then and also recognize that tendency would not apply to every individual and it would not to apply all of the teams or organization. You mentioned there's culturally collectively might be a little bit more reserved or sit back. But then this will happens to how you really build the team and encourage everybody. I think, day one when you start at the company, there is onboarding, there is one-to-one you're gonna start to talk to, there is team meetings, and then you can really easy to set it up. When a new member come into the team, you can see how the team meeting is being set up and how the leaders are approaching different things. I
Yeah.
think the thing is, if you wanted to encourage people to speak up, you have to start in asking them what's their thoughts, what's their feedback. I think in a lot of the early days in some of the career, we may not get the chance to be asked about this. And then
Yeah.
so we just take it as something very regular. It happened everywhere. As no one cares about my opinion and my opinion, need to be held back and only follow what the boss wanted. But
Yeah.
then if you just get the habit always being asked about what's your thoughts, what's your opinion, and then even including how we could run the meeting better, and then what would be the best time to meet, right? What's your thoughts about the company's product, about the team?
Yeah.
Then people will start to build that habits and then get used to it, and then later on, even without you ask, they will be very honest and share their thoughts around that. So it's just about a matter of building the habits and then a
Yeah.
matter about being very intentional about recognizing the culture pattern, but also how you can, just like you said, creating your own individual culture as well.
And that also makes me think about another question that I have, that say there is this independent structure in place, and 99% of the times that succeeds because you're probing or actively getting someone to get involved, right? But when it comes to few people, I have seen in previous organizations, they still seem to get away with not doing things, right? So how do you hold someone accountable, or how do you kind of build that culture towards them, or how do you involve them in taking more initiative?
Then when it comes to measure the results and encourage everyone to have ownership, this is where comes to, first of all, is the goal setting. And then
Okay.
secondly is how to align the expectation. And this has to be communicated upfront. What's the goal? What do we trying to achieve? And
Mm.
then it's very important to provide context so everybody is buy in, right? Understand what's the context. And with the context, there's creativity to go around, because I do believe every time when we say, hey, we want to reach to a certain destination, there will
Yeah.
be so many different ways to reach there. You can Uber there, you can, walk there, you can
Yeah.
biking there, right? And then for the ones working on this, they have the best judgment of what's the
Hmm.
best way they can look into.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the leaders could really empower individuals to achieve that. And then also the expectation, right? And then we don't encourage for micromanagement, but that it cannot happen to it's till the end, almost the deadline, and then you're telling the things haven't been able to finish even by 50% of that. And then I think this is where you set the expectation is how do we get to know the process? How do we do the check-in, and how can we make sure the things are on track, and then encourage people to ask for help? And that's the critical thing, because a lot of time people don't ask for help, and then they just
Hmm.
think this is all my stuff. And I think sometimes could be have the wrong perception around ownership, and
Yeah.
thinking ownership is doing everything myself.
Yeah.
But asking help is also an ownership as well, because
Of course.
there's certain limitation, and then you can ask for help, and this is
Yeah.
help you to achieve that better.
Yeah.
And so those are all of the expectations can just communicate and build in that environment. And again, if someone is new to the company, first time doing this,
Yeah.
maybe just checking more closely to walk them through, and then getting them familiar with all of
Yeah.
these experience, and then continue to know, okay, this is the best way for them to operate.
No, of course, it can be a little overwhelming for someone who's just starting out. I mean, even if they know what their role is supposed to be, starting out in any new company, because I've been there personally, that starting out at any new company gets a little overwhelming, at least for the first few months. I know, like when you're dealing with multi teams across different countries, different cultures, it can sort of get a bit too much for someone who's not been in such an environment, right? And you mentioned that it's more of like a collaborative team effort where you all decide how to get to the final destination. So when you're dealing with such a team collaborative effort, how do you basically how do you scale as an organization? What becomes harder to kind of manage? Is it accountability? Is it communication? Is it alignment? What would your thought process be on that?
I would say is all of the above, right? Everything is has to be in place in order to scale the
Yeah.
team and then build a well-rounded organization. For the past couple of years, we've been using OKR, and that has been really
Yeah.
helpful. That would be department level, team level, individual level, and
Yeah.
then so everyone can be extremely clear around what are some of the goals they're trying to achieve, and then what are some of the ways they could help achieve that. And
Yeah.
then also really trust the leaders to working with the team. And of course, there is very important level team building and team bonding and connectivity. But overall, I think just trust the team with a lot of the day to day, that will make it easy to scale. And then
Yeah.
do have to recognize, is it, when it comes to solving the challenges around, scale or certain issues, you also have to recognize, is this a project issue? Is
Hmm.
this a people issue? Or is this because of the culture?
Hmm.
Because certain time when it comes to team, people might having different feedback or certain complaints on certain things. Oftentimes I recognize it could be just because of the culture. And then the culture just again go back to how can we communicate a little bit better and explain to everyone, this culture they tend to think this way, this culture
Yeah.
they tend to think that way.
Yeah.
How can we just all understand a little bit better for each other, and then communicate, just chat a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
Because even certain member, they just message each other, they never set up a meeting.
Yeah.
That might be a problem.
Yeah.
And then no matter what culture, you seeing each other's eyes, you seeing how the face looks like, right? I see you have Lego at the back. That looks cool. You see me have certain things there, right? There is level of
Yeah.
connection there. We have to
Yeah.
put, the team to building that. So that's still very, very important. So that's where even with early stage, I actually the one started the initiative for having the team lunch together. Right.
Okay.
First of all, in person, because we're all in the office, and later on we started to do remote. It has been so many years, we still do that. And then
Yeah.
because of time zone, we're not able to sometimes not able to do team lunch, then let's do team games.
Yeah.
Or using certain time in the team meeting, let's just do a fun activities, FAQs, or sharing different things to make sure people are connecting,
Yeah.
and that can really help solving a lot of the culture challenges too.
That's actually great that you said that, where you mentioned that you were the one that took the initiative when Firework was building from ground up, right? And you put this entire culture in place, which then other people could follow. Usually, what happens is when it's a small team, you can extend that culture to everyone, but when the team grows, it somehow starts getting dissolved, right? Mainly because it could be the leadership, it could be people are very busy with work, it could be that they are busy with getting things done. What I see at Firework, that's remained consistent, at least for the time that I was there. What So I feel like it's very much to do with the kind of vision that the leadership has when it comes to the culture. How did you manage to, because every department has a different head of department, right, or a different leader, how did you figure out that what is the key attribute that you want to focus on when you're hiring such leaders? What is that attribute to go for, that this person is then going to be able to build on my vision that I have for my team?
It comes to a few things. First of all, the skills and experience that leads to the personal expertise going to be very critical and important.
Yeah.
And that basically, because when you're building a high performing team, you want to make sure they, first of all, they have potentials to perform very well.
Yeah.
And then second thing is touch on all of the culture aspect, and to evaluating that you can see, oh, how these people deal with stress and deal with problem, and then how they usually do communication, how they approach new things. And I think I always have to make sure they understand the startup environment and understand the startup mindset. So that's why in all of my communication, I purposely asking them a lot of questions around how they starting new things and how they deal with certain challenges and how they initiate different things, or the things they are learning, or how they usually gather the news and then get some of the industry updates. Those will see different aspects of that person. But also, one part is about evaluating the talents. Another part is really what we previously mentioned, the onboarding going to be very important, and how you set up this person to be successful. Because after all, is about potential. It's not about what you already set in place, because everyone will learn and develop at the same time, and
Mhm.
how you can bring up that part of the potential to make sure they are on the same track with you, they align with you.
Got it. And that is to do with the culture. But when you talk about a fast moving company like Firework, how do you manage speed and alignment when you know that different teams work differently and across different regions? So how do you manage consistency in that? Is it just when you talk about setting workflows and processes, what is the kind of process that you set to maintain that, okay, we have, say, this vision to meet in this quarter, how I'm going to set this process in place for my team to work as per this. So how do you go about that?
For me, my approach is always try to centralize workflow. I know different culture having, or different region might have certain preference, but it's always very essential to have a centralized workflow.
Yeah.
And each of the region or country, what they can think about to customize is, oh, maybe the last point of this, or maybe there are certain things they need to add one more step, and that's totally okay.
Mm.
And so usually when we develop workflow, it's just someone taking initiative. It could be me, it could be someone based in Europe, could be someone based in Japan, right? They can lead the whole thing and develop that. And then once is confirmed, it will consider as a global workflow and introduced to everybody. And that will solve a lot of the challenges, because you work the same way, you follow the same workflow. And
Yeah.
then next is how to set up certain regular communication and check in to get specific updates. That's also going to be very critical for people to understand and then learn from each other. I know in the days, you probably remember there are time you either had to stay late or coming a little bit earlier so we can hop on a global meeting. And
Yeah.
so every region and every team can share a little bit, different, things happening. Either that happen, or someone needs to make sure there's regular checking in to each of the region and then share the collective insight, and so everyone can learn from each other.
Okay. When it comes to my experience working with Firework, I always, because you were directly the person I would go to in terms of any sort of mentoring that I needed, right? And I always saw you more of a creative leader versus an operational leader, because a lot of the ideas that came from you were very I would say they were very creative, right, in terms of how the business strategy should go, how the product strategy should go. When you talk about being creative, how important is it for creative teams to be involved in strategy versus just focusing on execution? Because a lot of times what happens when you look at design teams or product teams, they are very involved in getting things done technically, but not so involved in strategy. So what do you think, how where should they place focus on? Or should it be that while being technically involved, they should also involve themselves in strategy? How important is that?
Yeah, and I thank you for the kind word. And I personally really enjoy everything around the creative.
Yeah,
And I see that one of my drive and also one of my gift as well. And that's something I wanted to continue practice.
yeah,
I personally think here's the thing, people have different take around creative. Certain people will only see creative as how you draw things, how you paint things, or how
yeah,
you make a video, or how you record something. That's just only one aspect of creative. Specifically, when it comes to business strategy, there's just so many creative ways of doing things. A business strategy could be A, B, C, D ways to operating that. And
mm,
even let's talk about pricing strategy. Very, very technical, very, very data driven. It could be
yeah,
very creative in that way. So I do like to encourage everyone involved in the creative perspective in early stage, and then that could bring a specific change. The only thing is to paying attention and knowing where you want to deliver that, right? If you're deliver that to a, let's say, branding or marketing person, maybe that visual perspective is going to be extremely critical. But if
mm,
you're talking to a revenue leader, they may not very impressed by a beautiful PowerPoint. They
yeah,
might be very pay more attention to all of the impacts and data specific to the ROI. And so that's where knowing your audience and you can bring different power into
yeah,
those. I personally have a lot of experience of bring into early conversation, and then a lot of the leaders from the other side, they get really impressed, and just because certain things are our services scope able to expand in global perspective and help them to achieve a lot of things, which
yeah,
help them to creatively think, oh, Firework is more than this,
mm,
or could have so many different creative ways engaging Firework into those conversations. So
mm.
in that scenario, I think creative is definitely a very important win.
And when you talk about our team specifically, when you talk about creative strategy, at Firework, it was closely tied to commerce or monetization. Where do people most often struggle when their work has to kind of prove the measurable business impact?
Yeah, because I think that the challenge part is when it comes to creative, there will always be transactional part of this, and
Yeah.
then there's also the impression awareness level of that. And then
Mm-hmm.
so what I usually do is maybe find a fine point to combine those together.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say a video or a live stream cannot be just only measured by the GMV that generated from this, the clicks or the conversion coming out of this. There is also level of educational value to it. There's awareness level to this, and then like a branding perspective to this. And then so when we measure that, we leveraging the power of community, how your community performing to those. And can we also looking into the lens a little bit longer? What's the lifetime value of that? What's the return to, purchase of that? And then
Mm-hmm.
so instead of just like a one looking things one piece by one piece, it
Yeah.
could be looking into things in the time span, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's measure 6 months, let's measure 1 year, 2 years. That could also give a different perspective. And then and it could be something else, maybe your search trend, maybe your social response to everything. And that's also a way to do that. And
Yeah.
then last of all, you can always do quality measurement, satisfaction score, or people's comments and all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be coming in different perspective to how people understand around the creative.
Got it. And usually, what I notice in organizations is teams, while they are very technically sound, they sometimes forget what it takes for a product to ship, right? When I self-reflect, looking at how my creative team is based in my agency or how other creative teams that I've spoken to are kind of focused on in terms of technical aspect. They sometimes forget how aggressive a product shipping looks like at any tech company. So when you think about your creative team, what operational realities do they need to understand? What operational realities do they need to be aware of for them to know that, okay, this is how things actually work, and this is how much it takes to kind of actually need the product to ship?
I think first of all is for everyone is forget about your existing role. You have to learn deeply about your existing company and the products, and then
Mm.
knowing what a core thing, what I'm sorry, to recognize what a core process would look like.
Yeah,
And let's say no matter you are doing creative design or you're any other aspects to understand what's the product cycle and then what's our client seeing all of those products and then what would be the critical moments for customer or users to decide this is valuable for them. So
yeah,
understanding that beyond your team, and then you really adapt your team into working into that mode, right? Because we
right.
know, okay, in traditional agency, you have your style way of working, you
Yeah,
have your certain program, you have your certain schedule.
yeah,
Um, no, you have to put into, let's say, a tech company context in order to make that happen,
yeah,
and that will help the team to do that. And then, of course, when we reshaping a lot of the workflow, reshaping how the timeline would look like, how can we also catching up with those? If our release is once a week,
yeah,
if our approach to our client is 2 days turnaround, we
yeah.
have to make sure that is a timeline expectation that everyone would understand.
Got it. And if we take a few steps back, you also mentioned that when you were starting out at Firework, you were still very much new in your career, and as you mentioned, you still are. I'm assuming that you were first an individual contributor to then becoming a manager to then becoming a head of operations, right? So, what is one common mistake that you see other individual contributors within the company or any other companies that you worked for? What is that one common mistake that they make, or list of mistakes that people make that before they become managers, or before that avoids them from becoming managers or stepping into leadership role?
Seeing that, first of all, when I first joined the Firework, we don't have people to manage. It's just like a very small team, right? It's around 10 people. You have no one to manage. And then
Yeah,
until the team growing, and then you see opportunities for
yeah.
there. I would say if you this is more talk about how do you see the potential of a manager. I think three things going to be very important. One is, first of all, you have to be a I have to say you have to be a good performer, and specifically in the beginning.
Mhm.
If this is your first time being a manager, stepping from IC to a manager, you have to be a strong performer in order to fully truly understand the business, truly understand the things you're doing. Then you
Yeah.
can see opportunities to growing from there. And second thing is you're the one paying attention and then taking initiatives, because a lot of the IC or a lot of the member, they just think it's too much effort to
Mhm.
think about something new, too much effort to make a recommendation or suggestion.
Mm.
But if that's started to becoming your habits of, oh, it could be nice, we don't have this right now, but if we try something like this,
Mm.
that's going to be very very important to stepping up the leadership. But because the more you're the top leadership, the more you have to really thinking what else can we do, right? What change we can bring in. That's constantly back on my mind every day. And the
Mm.
number three is to care and recognize things beyond your team, right?
Okay.
Because as I see, you're probably under a structure or being under certain shelter. You don't have to talk to anyone else
Yeah,
because the workflow has been designed very well. But
yeah,
when you're getting on the manager, your exposure to other team gonna be very important, and then how you see things happen and then make all of the other teams collaborating, that's gonna be a very very critical job, because we all know no individual team can survive just by themselves, right? It's not just about, okay, doing my work well. It's also about
Yeah.
how to make sure collaborating well. And then so if you, before you don't talk to others, you don't connecting with others. In my work in IC, but as a manager, that's going to be very critical important is how did my workflow working with others' workflow in order to make things happen. And
Hmm.
so this is where I always encourage everyone to, can you step up to think in the bigger picture? I know it's not your job being a sales, it's not your job being, accounting or different roles,
Yeah.
right? But then is there any, just at 1% of the knowledge you can learn, understand a little bit so you can see how the things been floating in between all of the teams. And so you know how you can play a critical role. And this
Yeah.
is also a fundamental to think about continue if you want to growing and then stepping up.
Yeah.
That's where the core thing is. Oh, I'm able to see commonality between these two teams. I'm able to level or grow my team into a different perspective. And so this is what I see. I mean, the opposite way is certain times people might miss that or don't care about what other teams
Yeah.
are doing.
I see from what you told me that you, I mean, I noticed this at Firework as well, that you come from a very learning driven mindset, right? And you instill that within your teams as well. You push them to learn every day. I remember all the decks that we used to go through just to go through the product. So I know that a learning driven mindset is very important to you. So when you talk about you as someone starting out in your career, what is that one mentorship advice that you had gotten from your mentors that has helped shape you or helps or still stayed with you?
The very important thing I learned is know what's your objective. And basically knowing your objective, then you will shaping how you do the things. And then you have ownership and creativity to shaping how you do the things.
Hmm.
Oftentimes we just too, I think a lot of people too focus on how you do the things, forget about the
Yeah.
objective, right? And then just seeing where you want to reach and then how you get there, it's really matters about your creativity around that. I see this really help me a lot, and then specifically helping others too, because there are time people get concerned or confused about, oh, why this leader wanted this, why that leaders wanted that. I
Yeah.
often say, don't take it literally, right? If they want to achieve this goal,
Yeah.
let's just think about how to achieve that. Maybe they gave examples, they gave references, but if it doesn't work, you can always do your own way. I think
Yeah.
people tend to struggle too much on, oh, because there's a specific reference provided, we have to go extreme and then exactly that way. And
Yeah.
so this gave me a lot of flexibility. And then I see no matter what are the things we're trying to do, it is always focus on the results and then the angle that has been very enjoyable and then very easy to do it.
Okay. And in today's world, like when you look at how things are getting automated or how the AI tech is evolving, right? Besides having that objective in mind of what your goal should be when you're focusing towards a task, what skills do you think will become more valuable rather than less over a period of time?
I think AI and automation help us to do things faster and
Yeah.
learn things quickly and get us into a lot of the information. Then it comes to very important around judgment and taste.
Hmm.
Basically knowing what is good, what is bad. And even right now, when you're asking questions to AI, they will say, it might get wrong. You have to have your own judgment.
Yeah.
And also when AI gave you recommendations on 10 different ideas, right? 20 different ways of doing things, you have to be the one decide and judge which is the one I'm going to choose, which is the best one to move forward. I think that sense and an understanding going to be very critical. And it specifically comes to creative. There are parts, yeah, you can calculating a few things, or finding a formula, eventually you calculating and having a specific score. But there's also certain sense and an instinct coming from human immediately, right? Because for example, when we talk about how to a building or shooting something beautifully, you
Yeah.
can break down by the elements of you needed this, needed that, but then the fine craft it's coming from, oh, when it's this way is more natural, this way is more, approaching and warm to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be way more critical because
Yeah.
when things getting very, very fast and the decision has to coming out quickly as well. And then our humans decision around judgment and taste going to be extremely critical moving forward.
And what advice would you give people who want to, say, work for Firework or work at any large organization? There are a lot of people entering the creative industry when you talk about design, when you talk about web, when you talk about UI, UX. A lot of people entering that sort of field, that sort of industry. What advice would you give them?
I think there are two aspects
Yeah,
to looking into this. One is do not try not to design a specific path and then strictly follow that.
yeah,
Every every step and every experience you had could become a surprising things that you see, right? I take this as an example. For example, I work in a fintech company, and then later on, then I come into Firework, working in the tech space, but we primarily focus on short video live stream and all of that.
yeah.
I haven't seen that level of similarity to it. But
Mm-hmm.
guess what? We also launched a product called Instant Checkout. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of financial areas touching to it, and then that's also just gave me a lot of quick understanding around what the banking what would payment look like, and I just have a little bit more context than anyone else who doesn't coming from the background. So you don't know where exactly or when exactly some of previous experience or learnings could put in use, and then so don't trash out any some of the specific experience that you had, and you
Yeah,
don't have to design a very straightforward has to be level 1 2 3 4. It could be level ABC, then jump to 1 2 3, and then jump to something else. So and then give yourself some grace for that level of fun of exploring, and then even allow yourself to pivot as well. And then another thing, another advice is more towards young people,
yeah.
which we're seeing, when I'm working with some interns or mentoring some of the people, sometimes they lack of patience.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we all get used to short videos, we all get used to things just getting done within a few seconds.
Yeah,
But at a certain time, I see there's tendency, certain young people are lack of patient even just to themselves or to the work that they do. They're not chasing for great quality. They're not chasing for extreme performance. They just say, oh, this is enough. I'm fine to do it. Or if I'm not seeing this happening within 2 3 weeks, it is not good enough.
yeah.
But let's be honest, there's also a lot of things takes
Take
time.
time.
Yeah, AI can shifting things to make it fast, but you also know our life, and then a lot of time it takes longer time. And people also say a lot of significant transition and learning doesn't happen, just overnight. So it might happen in 3 to 5 years. It might happen in 10 years. So you
Yeah.
just have to get a little bit patient around that.
That's actually great advice, because I do remember getting the same sort of advice when I was kind of building my agency. I wanted things to happen very fast, and being patient is actually very important. Besides being patient, what is the mindset shift that you would ask any professional to kind of have when it comes to the new generation of leaders, say, going forward in Firework? There will be other leaders coming in. What is that one mindset shift would you ask them to take before entering any industry?
Um, I think a a very important mindset that's helped me a lot is just a growth mindset. And
Hmm.
then I think um, to embrace change, and
Hmm.
to say it's okay if this project is not turning out great, but focus on what are some of the learnings that we had, and then just ask yourself, is there anything I can just do a little bit better next
Yeah.
time than this time? And I'm sure you heard about that famous calculation is even just like a 1% better a day, right? And then for 1 year, and then later on the calculation will be over 37. So
Yeah.
that's a significant change. So that level of compounding, your continual growth gonna make a significant change to that. That's why is you cannot just purely rely on number of years of experience. You also wanted to look into, do you have significant learning
Yeah.
in certain period of time, or have you learned things differently on any of the projects? And then just keep seeing yourself as a startup and see yourself is evolving. That's going to be beneficial to no matter what jobs you're doing, projects you're working on,
Yeah.
things you're starting, even in relationships. That's in our life, right? That's going to make you fulfilling and achieving a lot more.
Yeah. Uh, that's actually great. Now, I wouldn't take much of your time. Actually just have one last question. Uh,
Yeah.
when we speak about the creative industry overall, where do you think that the industry still struggles, even though it's come a long way from when I went to college? I entered the industry. I started working. It's come a long way, but what do you think personally that the creative industry still struggles with?
I think the creative industry struggles on the area that how others see how others see it, as in how do you standardize things and how do you measure things and how do you make people understand that quickly. And unfortunately, I don't see this as a creative industry problem, but
Mm.
unfortunately, this is how society and then how the ways we started to measure and then try to calculating a lot of the stuff and try to break it down into industrial level and a perspective.
Yeah.
So creative should not be industrialized and should not becoming a specific science project measured by right all the data one by one. But unfortunately, people having this expectation and perspective onto this. So the creative industry that are still level of black box, not able to fully interpret it and explain itself very well for people to fully understand and capture that. Right. For example, it's just like when you explain a scope of production, it's just like unfortunately just a lot of people still don't understand that level of detail or thinking it either too easy or too complicated.
Yeah.
So that's where unfortunately we have to continue spending more time on that level of communication. And
Yeah.
then also because of the right expectation, we always heard about this is, oh, the clients wanted to do things very quickly. They wanted the things change at the last minute, or they wanted to go back to where it's getting started. And then how do we really explain the perception, the feeling to the end result going to be
Yeah.
very, very important. I don't have a solution for now, right? And that's where what I'm trying to do is how can we building processes, how can we building different workflow, or
Yeah.
even before when you're being part of the team, the creative strategy team is how can we having a very seamless, scalable way for people to see it in action, and then so they can fully understand what this could possibly look like. So
Yeah.
there's all the ways to translate and then bridge the gap between a black box-ish fine craft understanding versus what would be a tangible, measurable result looks like in the layman term.
Yeah.
And then it's not something mysterious, but it's something really helpful and then could be your best friend. It could be something to really help you to succeed to the next level.
That's awesome. I think, yeah, I channel your thought about it being more granular, where you have to understand the problem and then kind of focus on how to solve that. But yeah, I think I have covered all my questions. If you have any questions for me, if anything that you want to kind of bounce off me, uh, it would be great. And yeah, I think from my end, I'm done. And then thank you so much for the support once again. Thank you so much for taking out the time. But yes, do you have any questions for me?
Um, I think, all of these are great, and thank you for the questions, and made me to reflect a lot. And even I feel like I'm prepared, but then talking to you, sometimes I'm coming up with new thoughts and new answers as well. My question for you is, outside of this podcast, outside of the things
Yeah.
is, it's been a while that we connected, and it's been a while you led Firework, and then there are different things you're doing. If you look back at, your Firework time, or look back at the time we connected and collaborated, what
Yeah.
are some of the your reflection or learnings or advice that you could give me to even help me to grow better or help the team to grow better?
Uh, I would say, I mean, it could be it could be difficult, but I see like with organization scaling, sometimes being really involved with every team could take its own challenge, its own time. But I would say getting more on ground with and more collaborative with the teams, spending more time with them, spending more time with each member of your team. I know sometimes that could be very challenging, but I would say that yes, just understanding, as you said, like it takes a lot to kind of build that culture and keep it going. And sometimes the leaders that you've put in place might not be able to do that. uh, I know how involved you are with the team overall, but I would say just getting on one-on-one phone calls with them, understanding and pushing them to kind of get more proactive, understanding where they are coming from and what they are missing in terms of getting the vision out there for Firework. Um, and yes, I would say just keep building the kind of independent culture that you already are. Uh,
Mm,
Try to get people more proactively involved in contributing to your vision. I think
mm,
that's very important because I feel like I don't know how things have changed after I've left, but while I was there, it came to me naturally to kind of contribute to things that were happening at Firework. No one had to tell me, but I feel like some people did struggle with it. So I would say that
mm.
uh, yeah, just spend more one-on-one time with them and try to see how you can solve operational problems for them. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I hope this was great for you. I hope this also brings you some value. And yeah, I will let you know once this goes live. And then if you could be so kind enough to share it on your socials as well, because any sort of support will be really great for us at this point.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd love to. And then, yeah, just also if you have a few clips to, I know that the full one you're gonna publish on YouTube, right? And then
yeah,
there's certain clips you can share with me, and I probably have a few channels that I wanted to share as well. I think this is a good discussion, and then,
yeah,
just very thoughtful questions, and then it could be inspiration to others. But at the same time, it's a good way just record what we're thinking, what we have did before. I
yeah.
think those are very, very valuable.
Yeah, I hope to again connect with you in the future, and let's stay in touch more. I think yeah, we can definitely, even if it's not for the video, we can definitely jump on a call and discuss a bit more. I think this is definitely very valuable.
For sure, for sure. There's a lot more we can just learn from each other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome. Thanks,
awesome.
Yifan. Thanks for
Thank you,
taking our time.
Jimmy. Yeah, great to see you again. And
Same
then
here.
all the best with your current work. And then I see you enjoying Dubai. I'm really, really happy for you.
All right, have you also have a good one, and I will stay in touch, and you have a good rest of the day.